Welcome back, everybody, to Cinema Daily US for yet another episode of New York versus LA, because I am Matthew Schuchman here in New York.
And I'm Abe Friedtanzer here in LA.
And today we are talking about the new action film. I guess what you just call it action film. It's a lot of different genres, I guess you could say, but it's Bullet Train. I'm sure a lot of you know what it is by now. New film based off the novel Maria Beetle by Kotaro Isaka. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure. And very briefly, if you don't know much about the film, it's basically a bunch of different, I won't even say hitmen, I'll say a bunch of different contract specialists stuck on a very speedy train from Tokyo to Kyoto, and where they're all kind of after similar things and the craziness that surrounds it. Now, I didn't have any preconceived notions of I didn't know about the book previously. I didn't really read into it. I went into it fresh. Basically, what was your knowledge ahead of time, and what did you think of the end product based on what you knew ahead of time?
I knew nothing. I assumed that it was both a bullet train that goes quickly and a train with bullets on it, and some sort of violence. I assumed that was a double meaning there to the title. I found it to be very much like Smokin' Aces with Japanese influences.
Of course.
I think it's certainly a bit more engaging and polished than Smokin' Aces, which I did enjoy. But I think there's a lot happening, and I feel like it just sort of never lets up. And there was one moment where I was like, okay, I remember this movie is 2 hours and 6 minutes long. It's definitely like getting a little long here, but then like things were happening and it was fine. Like that was just one fleeting moment of, oh, it's long. And I was like, no, it's good. We're good. We're having fun. I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to try and ruin it for people. And while it can be fun at times, I do feel that it is a little too overly convoluted in its, you know, in essence, discovery of fate and luck, if you want to put it that way. But for as many explanations as it tries to give at some point during the movie for everything from the full story of what's going on to maybe the questions of why you have to wonder why nobody else on the train notices what's going on, I'm still bothered by the fact that not only does nobody on the train notice what's not going on, especially during the quote unquote quiet fight where they're, you know, technically on the quiet car the whole time, and all the things that get done in that before, during, and after, how nobody turns around and just forget about the joke about the woman shushing them, but how nobody's just like, what is going on? Like it's impossible to the fact that happens to be just a bar car that nobody goes into. So it's perfect to have all these massive fights that people can take their time cleaning up and be murdered in. It felt a little, I'm all fine for outrageous fun that I can sit back and just say, hey, let's go with it. But this one didn't seem to really gel that well because it didn't seem to know where it wanted to be a comedy and wanted to be a little bit serious about itself. And so those things not intersecting felt like a letdown.
I did notice that, the thing about no one else noticing what's going on, and again, that convenient car for a lot of different scenes. It didn't bother me. I think you could call it a commentary on what we don't notice in society. That might be giving the film too much credit, but it didn't bother me. I think it's definitely something that may bother you. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh, that sounds annoying, it will be. Like, well, if it, you know.
I mean, they do try. To me, they try to technically explain it with something which I won't say because I don't want to ruin anything. But even with that explanation, I don't think it fits. I mean, again, it's one of those things where, yeah, you know what? It's fun watching Brad Pitt be a little more comedic. You know, you only get to see him so many times do like the burn after reading kind of stuff. And this is not the same thing, but I think it falls along the same lines of that type of performance for him where we don't get to see it that much. And I like it. It's great watching Aaron Taylor Johnson and did I say Aaron Taylor Johnson? That's his name. Yeah. And Brian Tyree Henry doing their British gangster thing, even Joey King technically doing her British gangster thing. But ultimately it seems like it's more of people wanting to just have fun doing their thing and less of trying to tie it back into an actual worthwhile, just, and you know what, I'm having even trouble finding the words to say, just the story that actually comes together at the end, which, I mean, again, it does technically come together as far as what they're trying to deliver to you. It just doesn't come together as a cohesive film to me.
I mean, I don't know. I thought it brought together a lot of things I'm used to in movies, but in a good way. That I was like, oh, this is familiar, this is familiar, this is familiar. I'm glad that we don't quite agree on this because usually we do. We're pretty on in line. So let's make it a competition. But no, I think that things did work well. I didn't have to fully buy into each of the little twists or explanations or something like that. I also don't know, because the poster was crowded with a lot of faces. I couldn't figure out the entire time who Aaron Taylor Johnson was till I saw his name in the credits. I just was like, who is this? I know it's someone I'm supposed to know. Couldn't figure out the whole time.
Really interesting. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, look.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
But there were certain people who, the people in the audience's reaction to who they were makes me think that they weren't supposed to be known as cast members. And that was sort of cool and interesting. Even if it wasn't that significant, I did enjoy that.
Yeah, well, I think actually it's interesting because to me it goes both ways. Because yes, there are some cameo heavy things going on in this film, which I actually found too annoying because I thought it was too much at a certain point, and a lot of them seem to be like returning the favor kind of cameos too, which I found very strange. But there are definitely certain roles that, I mean, there was one very specific one the whole time I was just like wondering when we were going to find out who this person was, who this actor was. And then there are others where it's like they also, I mean, this is not something that's known because she's so heavily used in the promotion for the film, but like they hire Karen Fukuhara and she's like not even in the movie. She like appears in the background for 2 seconds and then appears in one scene for like a minute and a half, and then she's gone. And it almost seemed very strange that they would hire somebody like her for that. Maybe it's because I don't know, maybe they filmed it a while ago and they didn't think people would be that interested. I have no idea, but that felt strange to me. So it felt like it went in both directions a little too much, where it didn't focus enough on certain people and then focus too much on others. And then also, again, to go nitpicking about things that happens, like I won't say what it is, people will see it, but that ridiculous thing that happens with Aaron Taylor Johnson, impossible, absolutely impossible. I don't care what stupid movie you're making. I don't care if you want to have somebody hanging off a helicopter and doing these crazy things that, you know, are out of this world. The things that he did in this movie, too much.
Well, you obviously aren't a fan of the Fast and the Furious franchise, where gravity-defying moments are the best moments in the entire movie.
I don't love Fast and Furious like other people do, but I'm more forgiving them in Fast and Furious movies than I am for what happened with Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie. Yes, it's ridiculous when they bounce off of tanks and then land on cars and they're fine in Fast and Furious. But the thing that Aaron Taylor Johnson does in this movie, and everybody will know what I'm talking about when they see it, absolutely too much. That's what I'm going to say about that.
This movie reminds me a lot of some smaller films from last year, like Gunpowder Milkshake and Die in a Gunfight, but just on sort of like a bigger scale, partially because of the people involved. There was a momentary flashback I got to The Counselor, which was not a good thing, just because Brad Pitt, like there's a tiny like modicum of similarity to the role he played here and the role there. Like it really does diverge, but like storyline wise, like one wrong turn and he could have gone into that movie, I think, instead. But I do think the performances are fun. And to me, the MVP of the cast is Joey King.
I will say one thing about Joey King, and this is, I have a hard time saying it because, again, it's technically what becomes a spoiler. Because I'm no language expert. I'm no vocalist expert, whatever you want to call it. But I will say that I will say it this way is to not ruin it. She does multiple different accents in the film, but there's one she does later on speaking another language where I felt it was so natural when she did it. It was scary. Good. You know? And that's the thing. I think that while it's fun to watch these people do a lot of these things, and while there are a lot of things that are trying to be hidden that aren't that well hidden, and I won't say character names or actor names at this point because I don't want to, again, for people who may not catch on to it, no. It just felt like it was not a congealed film in a lot of ways, which is strange because they covered their bases for the story, but in the same breath, it just didn't feel like it knew where it wanted to be. If it wanted to be this out of the box crazy action film, did it want to be an actual, you know, search for the idea of what life is and all these other things? The balance did not balance out. Basically, that's how I felt about it.
And I think overall, I forgive a lot of those things, which maybe I was just having a good night last night. I don't know. You know, I just was in a good. I was enjoying. I was in a full theater, which I think is important. I think this is not a movie to watch alone. If you're going to watch it at home, at least get a few friends over, you know, to watch it with you when it comes out, you know, to home video or whatever streaming. But I do think it's a fun theatrical experience. And even if you don't like it, it's probably be more fun in the theater than it would be at home.
What would you say your final grade is?
B+.
I'm going C+.
All right, that's some fighting. We'll hope to be even further apart next time we do this.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us here on Cinema Daily US. Until next time, Abe, always great talking to you.
You too.